It is Sunday evening, and most of you know what that means. It's time for another episode recording of the Auburn Experience podcast. We're back in the saddle after a good 2-week break. Let's get into it. We're going to talk about a little bit Auburn sports, a little bit Auburn culture, and of course, all about the Auburn family coming up right now, finally. Well, War Eagle, everybody. I'm your host, Kyle Loomis, back in the saddle, and across from me, yet again, old co-host number 2, Mr. Austin Scott, feeling a little bit better, less under the weather. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good to see you. It's been a minute since you and I have been together on the Sunday night, so it's good to see you. And War Eagles, sir.
War Eagle to you as well. We have plenty to discuss tonight. As I said from the outset, we have been out for about 2 weeks. Well, 1 week was because of me. The other week was Austin came down a little bit sick last week. And I said this to the people. I did a little impromptu just discussion live stream with everybody last Sunday evening. I said, you made every attempt to be here. And I even asked you like several times, are you sure? Are you sure you're going to be able to do this? And you finally just relented and said, nah, I'm not going to be able to do it.
I put my pride down and I said, this is not going to be a good product as badly as I wanted to. And you did. You're correct. You asked me many times. And I even asked my wife, I said, should I do this? And she said, I think you're trying to beat this and it's not smart. And I said, okay.
But we're here back together again. For those of you that don't know how the show works, in about 4 minutes ish, we will begin our live recording of this podcast, where we won't be taking a lot of commentary from you guys during that show, but we're going to cover 3 main topics over a 30-minute show ish. And obviously at the end, I'll spend some time talking with you all. But now you can obviously ask us anything you'd like as we kind of get warmed up, let people gather into the chat. You can always start off by smashing the like button. You can always start off by, sharing it on social media. And of course, checking in with us. Post where you're watching from, your city, state. If you're international, you can do that too. And we're always happy to talk with people, see where you're calling in. Well, I guess not calling in, but checking in from with us. We got Joe, Stan, David, Brian, everybody, a lot of good folks. Jackson, Tennessee, checking in over there. A lot of fine people checking over from all around the place. Good to see so many of you all here. Time wasn't built in a day. He said Rome. There you go. I was like, time wasn't built in a day. Technically, time was built in a day by the one who created time. If I want to get really biblically philosophical here. I can go really deep today. You think we can?
We could. No, I don't think we can handle that.
Not today. How have you been over the last 2 weeks, buddy?
I've been good. Yeah, our world has been a little busy. I'm sure you can relate. But things have been good, and things have been, we're blessed, and we're thankful that we live in a busy time. But it's worn on us. So I will say, I think, outside of everything, the game itself, yesterday, being Auburn not in town and just being a good day of football was a good day for us to just be at home. And so I'm really thankful for that. We love those Auburn home games and those busy weekends where the town gets full, but it was very nice to have a slow day yesterday.
On that note, there was actually a lot happening in Auburn this weekend, which it's kind of a catch-22. I understand why they schedule things on non-football weekends so that it's not so busy everywhere, but I always hate it for those other teams that could be benefiting from the large crowds that are on campus too. So, it's one of those things you understand, but there's that part of me that wants it all to be together so we can all, indulge in it together.
Yeah.
We also, I kept this comment up here. We also need to be in prayer for Kyle here out of Tuscaloosa County, Alabama. We are, always thinking about our Auburn brethren that are stuck over there in the wasteland that is the western side of the state. So thoughts going out to you, Kyle. And you have my namesake, so I always got to think about that. You would think that having a field named after me would have boded better for the team.
You would think, if only that was the case.
If only, that's how it really worked, and I could pull the strings. Hey, it's named after me. Let's rip the turf out from under the Texas A&M people from time to time. I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of feels out there right now. We're obviously going to hit it.
A lot.
How are you processing all that?
If you're not too high, you can't get fall far. So, I think you and I have always tried to keep it pretty level here. Um, I think I did have us winning in our predictions from several weeks ago. Um, but this was also one of those, I think I marked them red, yellow, and green. One of those where it wouldn't surprise me if they did uh, end up losing. So, I'm not too surprised. I think the thing that we'll get into, and I think the thing a lot of people are feeling, and some people explain and express those feelings more dramatically than others, is that we're just we're all a little tired of the offensive lull.
Yes.
I
Yep.
think we're
Yep.
just all
Yep.
struggling to keep seeing what we all want to change. So
And
I get
so,
it. I get it. I think that there's some extremes going on, but I
yeah,
get it.
some people are having tougher times than other. Brian, his favorite team is
Brian, when you said good evening, I almost brought it up, but I said he's dealt with that enough today. So I wasn't gonna bring it up, but I did watch the end of that, and I'm very sorry, friend.
Yeah, yeah. It's look, when it rains, it pours for some people, and
Mm,
unfortunately for Brian, I'm sure many other people who have NFL teams that maybe aren't doing as hot. I'll tell you this: my fantasy team's doing just fine
me
uh,
too.
today, and I'm very pleased with that. That defense I put out there basically carried my fantasy team by itself, so I'm all about that life. Anyway, this is not an NFL fantasy show. This is not about us lamenting about all the things that are frustrating. Well, we'll get into that in the show. But we need to get started with the recording. So, one more reminder as you're watching this stream, we are moving into a record time, about 30 minutes ish, where we'll do 3 10-minute ish segments. We're going to mainly just catch up with the 2 to 3 weeks that we've been missing. A little bit of Cal talk, a little bit of homecoming talk, and of course, this past weekend. It'll probably kind of all intermix in some way or another. Basically, I guess you could call this an assessment point for us as Auburn football
Yeah,
fans, mainly going to be football focused for this episode. So if you are ready, we're going to get into it right now.
ready to go.
In 3, 2, 1. David Housel described it best. We are living the whole of the Auburn experience in good times and bad times, high expectation times, frustratingly low expectation times, times that don't seem to end. There's no light that seems to be at the end of the tunnel, but then we remember that this is the Auburn roller coaster ride. This is the Auburn experience. It encompasses sports, culture, and of course, the Auburn family. And because it encompasses the Auburn family, got to have an Auburn family member here to co-host alongside me. I'm your host, Kyle, back in the saddle after a little bit of a hiatus for both of us. Mr. Austin Scott, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kyle. War Eagle to you, sir. It has been a minute, but it's good to hear you and see you, and glad to be back in the saddle with all our friends.
We got plenty to talk about, and
Tons.
it's going to be football heavy, folks. It is, and rightfully so. I think there's a lot of assessing that needs to happen, and that's just the nature of the beast when we've missed the last 2 weeks. Again, for those of you that may not be aware, I've had a bunch of good personal stuff going on that we'll talk about many moons from now, but that's been kind of, I won't say holding me back, because it's definitely not holding me back. It's good stuff. But Austin was a little bit under the weather last week and tried to power through. And between me and his wife continuing to question whether he was able to, we finally convinced him it probably wasn't in his best interest. So don't ever question Austin Scott's commitment to you guys, because we had to force him out of seat number 2 last week. So we appreciate your commitment, Austin.
Just always listen to your wife. I mean, I think that goes far and above whether or not you should do a podcast. But yeah, it would have sounded really bad, and our listeners would have been like, "Oh my gosh, we need to buy Austin some new microphone equipment because he sounds like he's been smoking 2 packs a day." But I'm back.
What
I sound
happened?
okay, I hope, and so we'll just see. And I think we might have lost Kyle with some internet issues. Um, so we'll just keep going on, and I'm sure he will be calling me here any second, and we'll figure it out together. But Looks like Kyle has. We talked about this pre-show that he might have some internet issues that might cause him to
There we are.
freeze up. There you are. You back?
We are back. We're back.
Okay.
We'll power through. We'll power through here. I'll just count us down again, and I'll edit that part out. I think this is the great thing about watching a live show, is
You
that
see it all.
you see how the sausage is made. I'll count it down, and I'll just pick it up for us from there.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3. So yes, never count out Austin Scott, his commitment to this show, and we appreciate your service, sir. But we have just got to jump into things here. I mean, I feel like we can go 1,000 different ways with this. We have things that we want to talk about from Cal. We have things that we want to talk about from homecoming weekend, and that's probably one of the few good things of the last 2 weeks to really dive into. But we got to assess this team as a whole after SEC play. So if you guys will indulge us for a little bit, I know you're eager to hear our thoughts about last weekend. Let's go back. Let's go back to Auburn's on the road to California, of all places, the very first time. Can I just give the Auburn family a humongous shout out? Again, I don't know why we act like this is shocking. They continue to show up on the road, but it's not just on the road. It's in Berkeley, California, of all places. Seemed like there was a huge contingency of Auburn, comparatively, of course, it's their stadium, you understand that you're never going to win that battle. But I think we continue to show as an Auburn family. That was my impression, at least, Austin, that we did a great job showing out.
Oh, absolutely. And you always see when these kind of things happen, the first taste of it, of when Auburn's taken over somewhere, is Tiger Walk, right? With the visiting Tiger Walk, that's kind of this makeshift setup. It's word of mouth on where it's going to be and what time you need to be there, and the swarm of orange and blue just shows up. And I think that's when we all started to really see, at least on social media and things, that Auburn was going to have a heavy contingency out there, to no one's surprise. I think my favorite quote I saw was there was a University of Cal or Cal University, whatever the university is, their own security out there asked an Auburn fan, "Does this happen everywhere? Because we've never seen something like this." And it was like, "Yes, this is what happens everywhere." And you just how can you not love that kind of thing? Because that is what we've come to do or come accustomed to, is that Auburn fans travel. You and I talk about that all the time. It doesn't matter what sport, doesn't matter what bowl game or what NCAA tournament site, you're going to get a heavy contingency of Auburn people no matter where. And so that was awesome to see. It was great to have them there. The way the game ended up going, Auburn needed any ounce of orange and blue love they could get, and they did. And it ended up being a happy trip for a lot of folks.
And it was a late night for us over here on the East Coast. For me, for other reasons, but I was obviously trying to keep track of what was going on with that game. I will tell you this: I anticipated us going down to the wire with Cal, just because of the sheer nature of new team, new regime, new foundation being laid, and the stressors that can come with trying to adjust to travel schedules, to new how you warm up, how you prepare, get ready for a game on the road of that type of situation. I did not think it would be maybe that squeaker of a win at the end. But thankfully, what we're talking about, that game and pretty much the last 2 games as well, is how surprisingly Auburn's defense has been its strongest point thus far, where there was a lot of people that were excited about having Hugh, having Philip Montgomery come in. Ron Roberts and his defense, for a lot of reasons, has been showing out. And that's kind of what I walked away with, definitely the last 2 weeks, but in the Cal game too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, that game was the Eugene Asante game. He was everywhere for Auburn.
Let's work.
Let's work. And, I think a big part of this defense was they've lost a lot of talent with a new scheme coming in, new defensive coordinator coming in. This could be the weak point for Auburn going into the year. You and I talked about that a lot, that's what it appeared to be. And it's been the opposite, as you said. And so it's good to see. It's definitely going to be beneficial now that we've kind of got a small sample size of what Auburn might look like this year. And so thankfully that defense has figured out kind of where their playmakers are and where their strengths are, and they're just utilizing them. I love that they're going after the quarterback. They're, blitzes are heavy in this for this group. and it needs to be with what the personnel is. So I've been really impressed with Ron Roberts, and I hope we see more of that now that we're getting into SEC play.
Can we also point out that in terms of creating extra opportunities for your team, especially for your offense, we talked a lot about it last year in the final year of Brian Harsin. How long did it take us to get a turnover in the season? Wasn't it like
Too long. Yeah.
it was maybe 6 games into the season? No, maybe actually it was the 4th game, the Missouri game, with that goal line situation that happened
Oh yeah.
where they
Yep.
fumbled. But still, we have more than we had at that point already just in game 2. Like, it was just crazy to see the night and day difference of a defense under Ron Roberts versus, and look, I think Jeff Schmedding, the DC who took over for help me, who was the one before that? Help me, I'm on island here, I'm sinking.
Yep. Well, Schmedding.
He wasn't that
Well,
bad
no,
in my
yeah, and he's. I can't remember. It was a weird situation. There were so many of them coming in and out. Um, but he was dealt a rough hand, I think is
yeah.
what you were probably getting at.
Yes, that's basically what I was getting at. So it's just one of those things where the night and day difference happening on defense is pretty interesting. And we knew that we had a great defensive back group. We knew we had some great veterans, even with some injuries. But what we're finding out is some of that young talent, Kayan Lee, for example, is really, really strong and able to help the Tigers in a situation where they continue to take more injuries. So in my eyes, the strength is the defense. But what we're continuing to learn is, even starting back at that Cal game, is the defensive back group is really, really strong.
Absolutely, yeah, and that game would prove to see Jalen Simpson have his second interception. We'll get to the Sanford game in a minute. He would get another one. And so, yeah, like that's a good contrast between last year with regards specifically to turnovers. But this team is making those opportunities more, which, as we'll probably get into, that this offense is going to need many more opportunities than probably just usual. So, and I think Kyle's going to be coming back here again soon. So we'll probably pick up right there talking about the defense. Sorry, folks, for the technical difficulties. We're all in a weird situation and setting right now, but I'm sure he'll pop back in here soon. Um, yeah, if you're just joining us, we're discussing the last 3 weeks since Kyle and I have both been out. We've done the Cal game. We'll get to the Sanford game here in a minute, and then we'll talk about. I know we all want to talk about yesterday, so we'll talk about yesterday, and we'll all grieve together. All right, I think I see him back.
It's going to be one of those nights, folks. We're running about as well as the Auburn offense is right now.
I can't wait for you to go back and watch and see when I realize, and me just starting to ramble because I'm filling time with our people. But you'll see it in a minute.
Hey, I think I'm just going to keep this point in. I think I'm going to keep it at this point, not even edit this second one in, just for the hilarity of it all. So just to kind of try to get to the end of this segment for the Cal portion of the game, I think we found, things that we were very frustrated by that would continue over into the next, couple weeks, which we'll break down here in just a bit. But I walked away, not being super frustrated by the fact that we went to a very difficult situation and still got out of there with a win. Was it an impressive win? Will that be something that we look back in years to come and go, hey, wow, look, remember that Cal game we stood up? No, it won't be. But I walk away from this being happy the way we represented as a fan base showing out there. And much like with the Penn State game a couple of years ago, where we were excited to have them back or have them on our side, I hope Cal fans will come to us and experience why we're so fervent of a fan base.
Yeah, no, and that'll be a good return trip. I think it feels a little different, and this is probably more just personal bias because I went to Penn State. I did not go to Cal. That I feel like it won't be as sentimental,
Sure.
just probably because it's so foreign. But I mean, next year that's also an ACC matchup starting next year. So, which is bizarre. It's just bizarre that next year, we're gonna play the same school back-to-back years, less than a year apart, and they'll be in different conferences. That's the state of college football right now, I guess.
I mean, think about that. Auburn has concluded play with the Pac-12 as of this year.
Yeah,
That's
unless we get somebody in a bowl game.
That's true.
if we get to
Yeah, I was about to say, hold on now. Let's not count our chickens before we hat here. What we do know is that we played Cal for the first time as a Pac-12 opponent. We will play them for the second time as a difference conference, even if they still make it into the ACC. At this point, nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen. But let's put that one in the books, because I know there's more pressing matters to get to, and we'll talk about game 2 next. Homecoming is always a special time. And even in the midst of some frustrations right now with how offenses may or may not be performing, how, whatever your frustration is at this point, because we're recapping basically 2 to 3 weeks it's being out, I always value and love coming home for homecoming, whether it's the parade, whether it's everybody in the stadium together, arm in arm, singing the alma mater, whether it's a ginormous plane nearly hitting your jumbotron, because you got to do things. If as my friend Jameis Winston once said, if you're going to do it big then. I probably misquoted that, but it's close enough, because that was a weird quote he had that day. Homecoming is extra special, and I love it every single year. And I feel like you and I think on the same wavelength there.
We do, yeah. I mean, homecoming special. It's always ends up being just a full day of a lot of things that going on. It was a night game for Auburn, so it was truly a start to finish day of a whole bunch of activities. There's one of my favorite parts is always looking at the homecoming floats on the concourse and seeing who did it last minute and who put the work in.
There's always the one.
There's always one. And they looked good this year. It's fun for me, even though I don't even know these girls anymore, to see who's homecoming queen, to see the signs around campus and the town. And so it's just at its core a very college thing to have homecoming. And so it's very special. For me this year is extra special.
Yeah.
My boys went to their first Auburn game. And we made it a whole half, which is a whole half more than we were expecting to make it. So it was a full day. We had some friends of ours that are dear friends we met at Auburn, who also have a couple kids now. And we're planning on coming to this game, and we all decided, you know what, we're crazy, but let's just do it. Let's see how it goes. We're taking them in, and it surprisingly went okay. We spent a lot of time in the student center to feed and to hang out before going in. My friend's oldest is about almost 2 years old and absolutely obsessed with Aubie. So they went to see Aubie at Tiger Walk and got a little bit of a glimpse at him. But then we went to, his corner in the student center. And I think we could have left that kid there all day and come back after the game, and he would have been there. But just a special time. My friend Corey and he has a 6-7 week old who also went. We ended up I have one who's a little more, what's the word here without me getting in trouble? I have one who's a little more needy of touch and needs to be held a little bit more and not as self-content. Me and him and Corey and his daughter, we just did laps around the stadium, around the bowl of the stadium.
Yeah.
For a good quarter and a half. And I tell you what, it was a lot of fun. I got vantage points I've never gotten at the stadium. I got to talk to a lot of friends I hadn't seen in a while that I just happened to see, and we got a lot of looks of two guys walking around the stadium with the baby on the front. But it was really cool, and it was something I'm never going to forget. We called it quits at halftime, which is as good as I could hope for. And but yeah, homecoming had a special meaning for me and Emily this year. That's for sure.
You're talking about different vantage points. I will mention this. I already kind of dropped the hint that listening to the alma mater, all of us, those of it that know it, and it's a good portion of us that know it in the stadium, especially for homecoming, singing that. I had just thought, because it was somewhat easy to do at that point in the game, I was going to walk up to the very top of the stadium. I sit in the upper deck with my season tickets. And frankly, I don't think I've ever been all the way to the top. As poor as I am, I don't think I've had that, bad of seats up there. But I went up there just to kind of get a wide shot of everything. And luckily it was right in time for the alma mater song. And you can find it on our Facebook page. I think it's on most of our social media, and it's gone pretty much viral there. but all the stadium swaying and singing together. You're just one of those moments where my little cheesy heart that's gotten extra soft for personal reasons of late just like hit me. And I'm like, my gosh, why does homecoming do this for me every single time? I'm singing underneath the sun-kissed sky. I'm gonna start tearing up right now.
It's special, and it's the homecoming always brings the alumni band. So
Oh yes,
there's tons more instruments. The volume is amplified. It's special, especially. You know what, Kyle? Though, and you brought it up a minute ago. I'm gonna try and steer you off so you don't get crying on our
I
live
know. We'll get
stream
all
here.
right here.
It's a good thing you weren't up at the very top when that jet flew over.
I was close enough to where I was in the upper
I
deck.
believe it.
It was, here's the great thing about sitting in the upper deck. For moments like that, you see what's coming, right? So we're all trying to be as respectful as we have with our hands over our hearts, sticking the match, but you're always looking like this. And of course, me as a content creator, I've got my phone ready just for moments like that. Luckily, I did, because off in the distance, you see not an eagle, not a little prop plane, not even the little fighter jet. This just behemoth of a monstrosity just starts coming. I'm like, that's coming kind of, that's real low. That's lower than I feel comfortable with. Is that wing going to clip my neck? Like that thing comes through and just, I mean, it obviously had plenty of clearance. They knew what they were doing, but from the vantage point of the ground, some of the shots I saw, whoa, that thing came a lot closer than people thought that it would to the Jumbotron.
Oh, absolutely. And this was before Corey and I decided to get up and walk around, before we realized just how tight our seats were going to be, the person in front of us when you have a baby on your chest. But that the boys had their earmuffs on and everything. That thing came over and Emily went, "That thing's really close." That thing came over, and I mean, I had Brooks on me, and Brooks he's just barely dozing off, and he starts shaking. He's like, "What in the world is that?" So those little earmuffs are not jet fighter plane proof when they're just 100 yards above you in the air.
The opponent for that game, Samford, you have a connection to, several connections to. I know maybe in some small corner of your heart, it pains you a little bit just to see us do it like that to Samford. You're Auburn through and through. I'm not questioning this, but listen, you got connections there. I can understand if there might have been just a little corner that just said, I kind of feel bad for them, but they got a good paycheck.
They got a good paycheck. We're several years removed from my time working there, for those that don't know. But it's Samford. I love that we play in-state schools. I always have. Some other people in the state decide not to. For whatever reason, they decide to spend their money elsewhere, and it ends up kicking them back in the butt, and they have to go to South Florida for some years. But all in all, I have family members that have gone to Samford. I have 2 cousins that are at Samford right now. It's a special school, but Auburn did what they needed to do, and it was no surprise to me what the outcome of the score ended up being. So good for them and good for Samford, and all in all, a great homecoming for sure.
Right. And we'll use this as maybe the last part of discussing homecoming, because it'll be a great juxtaposition to what we're going to discuss in the final segment of assessing this team after first SEC play. But Peyton Thorne had a great night against Samford. You might say, yeah, it was against Samford. You might say, it's homecoming. Who cares? But you can't take that away from the dude straight up balled out and was the only reason we had not the only reason, but a big reason, channeling Cameron Newton, being the leading rusher, leading passer, obviously, and dropping a few dimes. Was he perfect by any stretch of imagination? No. Had 2 interceptions. One you could argue was not his fault. One was probably a poor decision on his part. But all in all, when you look at the final stat line for Peyton Thorne after that game, you're like, dude had a great game. I mean, at least we can at least say it for that week, right?
Oh, Kyle, there's a popular country song by Toby Keith that says, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
Wow.
And that's where I'm at with this. Because you're right. Peyton Thorne was a mere, 15, 20 yards away from being the first Auburn quarterback ever to have 300 passing yards and 100 rushing yards in the same game. Folks, that's more times than Cam Newton ever did it, Nick Marshall ever did it, Bo Nix ever did. A lot of good dual threat quarterbacks that have come through Auburn. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said I think we found something here. Even though it's Samford, I recognize it. We still had the interceptions. And it was a solid stat line for Peyton
Mhm.
Thorne. And as you said, a juxtaposition of what we saw like yesterday in the A&M game, just the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think that there were positives we were all feeling after the Samford game, and they might have come. We all came back to earth a little bit yesterday.
Sometimes we, in the Auburn experience, on this roller coaster ride, we feel like just as quickly as we fall, we can rise back up because it's happened before, as we'll talk about in the final segment. Sometimes it takes just a little bit longer. We'll see how much longer it takes. Final discussion tonight: Auburn versus Texas A&M. We had quite an interesting game. Well, it probably wasn't interesting. It was more frustrating than anything. The Tigers fall by the final score of 27-10. We've obviously broken down the feelings and had our therapy session on our post-game live stream on YouTube. And boy, did I get what I expected out of that. A lot of frustration, some founded, some very irrational. And again, as I continue to express to people, if you're not willing to say things to someone's face, don't be posting it on social media and on a YouTube stream. Don't be that guy. Don't be that lady. That's just not the way the Auburn family is supposed to work. I'm gonna get off my pedestal for a second here.
Here we go.
Probably gonna get back on it a little bit throughout this segment. But let me just put this out here, folks. There's no one here, Austin, myself, making any excuses for what happened against Texas A&M. Absolutely atrocious, disgusting, was frustrated. The coaches are frustrated. The players are frustrated. No one is happy with that game. There's a difference between understanding how you can be frustrated with something, but also understanding context. Let me understand what context means. Context means that you understand that this team has gone through 2 years of transition that it never should have gone through to begin with,
Oh
and
boy.
never should have even happened. But yet we had to have something new and had to have something different. And so when we don't get that, when the time when we want, we throw hissy fits. Just like because Bo Nix was the worst quarterback ever.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
And now, lo and behold, we want him back. We wish we never got rid of him. So I know I just made a lot of people mad with that little bitty rant, but it's been sitting inside here. And all my good feelings that I've had going on behind the scenes finally just like let loose there.
Yeah, well, you've had some emotional moments here lately for whatever reasons, and
Yes.
that's
People are
okay.
like screaming, will you quit alluding to that? We will talk about it at some point. It is just not appropriate at this moment.
The thing we talked about how Peyton Thorne's numbers against Samford were, or was it just Samford, or was it, I think, yes, I think you can say there was a point to where, yes, it was Samford and some inferior competition. I also don't think, I think we're looking at two ends of the spectrum here where Samford, yes, anybody what Power Five team shouldn't be looking like that against Samford? What quarterback
Right.
shouldn't be putting up back numbers against Samford? On the same vein, I don't think Peyton Thorne is as bad as we saw him against A&M.
Right.
Let's not forget Peyton Thorne. Yes, a 2-year starter at Michigan State, a team captain. The SEC will use the catchy phrase, and we'll make them a few more dollars. It just means more. And there's a part to where when you go into A&M, a team that has a ton more talent than you do, and a stadium with that many fans, and a team that is still finding its bearing with new play calling. They're still meshing together with their own relationships. Something like that bad can happen. I think that, Hugh Freeze has been very honest about where this team is at and where he has seen them and the talent gap, as well as where Peyton Thorne needs to be more consistent and improve. And I think Peyton Thorne would agree with that. When you have 3 quarterbacks that combine for 56 passing yards, something's not good all the way around. And so it's a gut check for a lot of Auburn fans. But I think if we're being honest with ourselves, a lot of Auburn fans that's from some expectations that were never supposed to be that high in the first place. And if I don't want to just give it all and say we should have been listening to Hugh Freeze all along, but who knows how his team situation better than anyone else is him. And I think that he has repeatedly said the talent gap's not there. We know we're going up against top recruiting classes year after year. and that we are going to have to get there at some point, and we will get there at some point, are his
Right.
words. But we're not, and that's going to show in this first year. So yes, it's frustrating. I said it pre-show before we started recording. I think a big thing that frustrates a lot of Auburn fans
It's the
is that
same
we're
stuff.
going on close of a decade to the same stuff. We're just seeing offense that's struggling, offense that's a lull. You know, this is a side tangent, but it relates. Sometimes in my thoughts of Auburn, Kyle, I sit there and I wonder, I'm like, would I want to go back to when we just had no defense, but we could outscore anybody, or we would, rely on the offense to just come out and, that 2014 year where we're trying to beat South Carolina by 45-42 just because the defense can't stop anyone with a heartbeat. And it's like, no, we would be frustrated at that too. Then, right? It ebbs and flows, and so right now it's the offense, and it's been the offense for several years outside of a couple bright spots. So you and I are in agreement that this is going to take time. Any coaching change is going to take time.
Right.
I think that Auburn was probably right to go ahead and move on from Brian Harsin because
Yes.
trends looked bad there.
Yes.
Like Auburn did not give him the time, but also it didn't look like, even given the time, I think you could make a arguable case that was not going to work out. Hugh Freeze is going to have time. And I think
Yes.
you're already seeing, based on recruiting, that there are more positives here, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. And
Yep.
and unfortunately, while it would have been really great to be going into Georgia 4-0 and having already an SEC win at College Station with a team that you were hoping you were more even against, that wasn't the case. And so Auburn has offensive questions yet again, and it's going to take a lot of patience this year, I think, Kyle.
I don't know how I could have put it in any better. I should have let you just open up instead of me going on my rant. I said what we're feeling, or I'll speak for myself, what I'm feeling. You said what is the correct way to go about this. I know it's frustrating, folks. I know it doesn't appear like I get accused of being a Pollyanna, a sunshine pumper. By the way, if you accuse me of being a sunshine pumper, you're accusing me of being a positive person. Okay. Wow. take a really hard shot there, Kyle. I don't know how I'm going to get back up from that insult, but I'm just saying, folks, we have to learn to look at context and to be patient. You asked for this. The collective, not all of us, the collective, though, which I am part of, said we wanted change. Boy, did you get it. So sit back, ride it out, and just be patient. Now, about the quarterback play, I'm not going to sit here and say, we talked about Peyton Thorne had a great game against Sanford. We talked about how awful it looked in this last game here. I actually agreed with the decision to bring Robbie in, as much as I don't like to switch quarterbacks in and out, because when you're getting that much of a pass rush from Texas A&M, and for whatever reason, the offensive line just wasn't getting together that game, you got to have a more mobile quarterback. And even as mobile as Peyton showed he was against Sanford, we know Robbie is the athlete of the quarterback room. So why not put it in the hands of a guy that's got the best chance to escape, to make plays with his legs, to run on the run, make a play, even with throwing the ball. So I didn't disagree with the decision to pull Peyton. In fact, maybe we could have made an argument that could have happened a little bit sooner. I think there's a lot of people too that look at Peyton, look at Robbie, and say, why is Holden not getting a chance? As we've told you before, folks, if they're not playing the amount you think that they should be playing, there's a reason behind that. The coaches have 150% of the information. We have, I always say 33%. It's probably less than that. And I think Holden is an outstanding quarterback, an outstanding thrower. But there's a reason that Robbie gets to play more in their Peyton, because they have earned it. And if you don't like that, tough cookies. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, and if you want to be brutally honest, Holden got to play. Holden got to play when the game was still intact. It's not like the game was gone at that point. It was still a 2-possession game where Auburn had just gotten some momentum, and Holden Geriner comes in. And it's not like it, the momentum continued. Holden made some good throws and had some chances, but it's not like he moved the ball any better than the rest of the team that day.
Sure.
So that's where Auburn's at right now, and it's up to the coaching staff to figure out, excuse me, with the hands they're dealt, how to best compete for Auburn. That does not get easy with the schedule coming up, such as life in the Southeastern Conference. But it is their job to make sure that Auburn can they give Auburn the best chance to be successful and to win these games, no matter the circumstances. So we'll have to see. I think we just need to continue to stress patience. If you were expecting 10 wins this year, I'm sorry. That was your own fault.
I'd like to also show you Bigfoot if you were expecting 10 wins this season, like as a legitimate reality. Was it a reality that's I think Bigfoot's a possibility, but someone's not been able to show me an ounce of credible evidence yet. Like that's impossible to disprove. So if you can show me impossible to disprove, I know I'm saying that backwards, evidence that we could have won 10 wins this season, it was possible. Unlikely. I think we all just need to take a step back and just realize, hey, boys and girls, buckle up. I'm going to use somebody who said, never mind, Kyle, back up. Back up. Back it up. Back it up. Anyway, patience. And, maybe to round out this thought on Texas A&M, I feel like we're kind of alluding to this. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you feel like Saturday was more of a just everything went wrong that could situation and we looked a lot worse than we actually are? Or do you really think that there are just problems that have to be addressed and we're going to take time to address? I mean, what is your gut telling you about this team? Are they as bad as they looked, or is it fixable, more fixable?
I don't think they're as bad as 3 quarterbacks for 56 yards. Like that's a level that has not been hit by Auburn in quite some time. And I think it was a combination of things. When I say the talent gap between Auburn and A&M, I'm mainly talking about the recruiting level. A&M is not. You're not going to see A&M in the top 25 today. You're not going to see A&M.
There's a reason for that.
Correct. There is still issues on their side of the ball, and I think Auburn was just hoping to, see if that gap was a little more closed than they thought, outside of just the talent on the field as far as recruiting level. If that game is in Jordan Hare Stadium, what's it look like? Who knows? The fact of the matter, it wasn't. But Auburn has a chance the rest of the way to see where they match up against the rest of the teams in the league. And I don't think that they're going to, be 3-9 this year, with only Vanderbilt or I know that would be losing the rest of the way out. There's wins left on the schedule for this team, no matter where you think they're at right now. And especially as they continue to gel and get better and this coaching staff continues to see what they have. So I don't think they're as bad as they were Saturday. I think a lot went wrong, but I think A&M was just better, if we're being completely honest. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's sad and it's unfortunate, and I sympathize with a lot of the frustration.
I do too.
But at the same time, do I want to go? We don't have to say the things we're saying. So I want our quarterbacks to be bodacious too, but they're just not. What, Kyle? What?
I wasn't ready for that one. I'm gonna be honest with you. I wasn't ready for that one. I was gonna use our old famous phrase. It didn't have to be this way. So it is what it is. I'm dancing on a razor's edge. I can't even talk on a razor's edge tonight. That's how up about this I've been for quite some time. Patience, saddle up, folks. It's still great to be an Auburn Tiger, whether you believe it or not. And there's still plenty of season to sit back and enjoy. And maybe with a little bit of hope, you might see a little bit of magic come out of the Hugh Freeze era, even in year 1. That's going to do it for episode 51. We finally got it in the can after a few weeks of the Auburn Experience podcast. If you want to catch up with me, you can do so on X. I guess we're officially saying it now, at Kyle Loomis 24. I'm sure there will be plenty of opinions about what I had to say. So hit me up there. Let's talk about it if you want to. Where can they find you?
Austin G. Scott on just about anything. Go after Kyle.
I'll take it.
Happy to talk with you. And I'm sure you've already gotten some reactions to things you've posted. I haven't gone back to see how those are turning out for you, but I'm sure
Not as much as you think, but
that's good.
I think some people are realizing I'm not saying I'm all knowing here, but I think there's some sound reasoning in some of this stuff. So let's just leave it there, and I'll probably say one less thing before I get myself in further trouble tonight. Thank you guys for listening. Till we talk to you again. War Eagle.
War Eagle.
All right, that's episode 51. We made it through technical difficulties, me going off for a little bit, and we'll see how that response happens. I would imagine that some of you watching did not like that either. So,
yeah.
But I shared my opinions. That's what we have it here for. We appreciate you guys' patience, though, tonight with dealing with the technical difficulties. They literally, I had to switch networks twice during the show, like wireless networks. And there was no reason, there was no indication that would have happened any other day. Like I've been here in this particular location, and today it said, you know what? We're going to throw one more wrinkle in the saga that has been trying to get episode 51 done. But Austin, final thoughts before you need to head out?
Just everybody hold on. It's going to be okay. It's going to be bumpy, but we're all going to enjoy it together. You know, Kyle, a third of the season's over. A third of the regular season.
Oh, why do you got to do that to me? Come on.
Because people need to understand that this goes by too fast. It's a lot of season left, and this beautiful time of year goes by far too fast to be whining about the smallest of things. So just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. We got Georgia coming up this weekend. It's the Deep South's oldest rivalry. Let's be better than someone that barked at another human being today, folks. Let's enjoy the ride.
If you're barking more on social media than a Georgia fan barks in real life, that's a problem.
You got problems. Yeah, you got problems. You need to stick a collar on your neck and get out in the backyard and lift your leg up.
Wow. All right. On that note, Austin, get out of here before you get yourself in trouble tonight.
Hey, I was good on the recording.
You were, but after the fact, what you just said, that's on your own accord there.
We'll see you later, everybody.
All right, see you, buddy. War Eagle. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. Would love to hear some of your thoughts and commentary. Look, I know a lot of you, I've seen some of your comments in the chat that you probably disagree a little bit with our takes on things. I'd love to hear some of it. Let's talk about it tonight. You know, I'm not going to bite anybody's head off, but I know this is definitely one of those times in our football's trajectory where there's a lot of tension about the team, about progress, about opinions that are different from each other. And that's the great thing about opinions. We all got them and they all stink. Because mine's not any better than anybody else. It's my opinion. It's your opinion. You're entitled to it. Doesn't make it any less smelly. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was nice to be back in the saddle with Austin because I have missed being with him. We have had just a heck of a time trying to get episode 51 done. What's funny is we got together for episode 50, special episode, live in person together. I think it went really well. And then after that, we were just like, we're done. But we don't anticipate having any other issues. I probably will be in this exact same makeshift studio next week, probably. And I would say it's still 50-50 at this point. So hopefully we won't have any internet issues like that. But if you guys have things that you still want to talk about, mention, I'll go back and hit some of your comments throughout the chat and we'll talk about it from there. Those that are productive to the conversation tonight, not things that we'll just rehash over and over again that we maybe already have talked about. Not to say that your opinion's not valid or you're not entitled to it, but if it's just a comment that we've already addressed, then we might hit something else. Let's see. Before we do that, I want to remind you of a couple things that we do have a Wednesday night show scheduled for this week. The Auburn Family live stream at 8 Eastern time. Don't miss it. You can call in. We can get the feelings out, have another therapy session. We also will have a Thursday night show, but I will ask again for continued patience as we just got craziness going on in my life right now. Would be at 8 o'clock. Normally we are planning to still do that at 8 o'clock this Thursday, but things could get a little crazy and hairy. So just saddle up, as I just said during the stream tonight. But what's on your mind? Let's talk about some of the things that you guys want to talk about. Let's be real. We are here because too many people were unhappy with Gus only winning 8 to 9 games a year. Obviously, time has shown us that it was a horrible mistake to let Gus go. I Brian, I tend to agree with you. But I'm also going to play devil's advocate. You know me well enough by now. I'm going to play devil's advocate for those because I don't want people to ever feel like they come here and this is an echo chamber. We don't argue the other side. I can understand the argument that it was time for a change. I disagree that it was the time for a change, but that the time for something different from Gus / the program was getting closer. I disagree on the timing mainly. It wasn't that I thought that Gus Malzahn could never, ever do anything wrong. It was just, I think context, my favorite word these days, was lacking a lot from that decision making. And especially during a COVID year when there was no one really worthy is not the right word, but it's the one I'm going to use, worthy of the job, the Auburn job at that time that was realistically going to take it. But we are in this situation because we made the decision to fire Gus Malzahn. And to this point, you're going to have to fight real hard to make the case to me that we didn't, because of that, we didn't make the wrong decision. We made it. My belief is we'll get to the point where we can finally say we got there. But the question will be that gap in between, was it worth it? We'll find out in time. Hopefully it will be worth it. And I'll be the first one to say I was wrong. It was well worth it as much as I love Gus Malzahn. Have to have patience to rebuild. Cody says, I hope we will have a chance at Georgia this year at home. Anytime the Auburn team is at home, they have a chance to win. If you need any example of that, I will point you directly to the 2021 Iron Bowl. There is no reason ever that Alabama team should be seconds away from losing to that Auburn team. Not just because of where they were at as a program, but because of Bo being out, TJ playing hurt. And somehow, some way, we were a walk-on kicker had to knock down a 50-yard field goal to keep us in the game, and it happened. There's no way. So if you don't believe that Auburn has a chance to win at Jordan-Hare, if it was a night game, they get really crazy chances then you don't understand the Auburn history. But we also got to talk about what? Context. Georgia maybe has been less impressive this year. They're going through some transition themselves with some very important names being gone from their program, but there's been very few legitimate issues for them. Stands to reason Auburn's got an uphill battle even at home to climb with this team. But if you think they can't win, you just don't know your Auburn history. And I'll stand on that one. Let's see. Stan says his expectations were a better offensive line and quarterback play. And I think it's great to have expectations for better offensive line and quarterback play. But I'm going to use my buzzword, context. What you're missing in that argument is you set the expectations that by this date it needs to be this. And maybe whether you said that or not, clearly by not specifically your reactions, by a lot of people's reaction, it was by SEC play, I need to see this. I don't think that that's fair or realistic to this team, seeing what they've gone through. And now in terms of Peyton Thorne, maybe I think that's a lot of the big argument these days. I think a lot of people have fair points about you would expect a little bit more out of him as an individual from what we've seen previously 4 games into the season, even in the harsh environment of an SEC team on the road. But at the same time, it's tough, man. It's the SEC. There was a lot of pass rush. And I spent in the post-game show being what I felt was constructively critical of the O-line. And I think that's still very fair to be. But I recognize, and I'll say this for the record, that it's not all on the offensive line. I think I said that very clearly in the post-game show. Some of y'all seem to have missed that. But there's a big reason that a quarterback gets real skittish, takes their eyes from downfield, and doesn't maybe takes longer for things to progress than they should or too quick. It's because habits are being built because there's not as much protection. And yes, they've had a pretty decent first 3 games. But if you're coming into a team where I'm sure you've watched some film of it and seen what the issues were with Auburn over the past couple of seasons, and then all of a sudden there's a game like that where you drop back and 2 sacks in the first series of the game, or almost sacks. I think there was at least one. you're going to start thinking, is this about to be me too? It's very easiest for us to be critical when we're not standing in that pocket. Think about that. Corey, you are late to the party. You missed a wonderful rant. Probably an awful rant, to be honest, was what people thought by me during the show. But happy to have you here, and thanks for stopping in with us. Got a few minutes left. Want to hit some commentary that you guys may or may not have, things that you might have wanted us to discuss during the show that we didn't. As a reminder, I think a lot of people come to this show thinking it's just going to be another football analysis show, and it is in some ways, but we try to give you a whole and complete Auburn experience. Let's see here. WT said earlier, football is right where I expect it to be, a rebuilding, retooling year. Anyone who had us winning a big year was unrealistic. 6 wins is doable. 8 wins would be a great season for us. I think 8 seasons for me, WT, was, and I've said this, I think you've probably known this for some time, was the expectation / prediction. Below that becomes, okay, it's fine. Like, it's understandable. But, and when I say below, I'm talking about 7, 6. 5's a little concerning. Auburn should be able to win six games every year. Should be able to. I think 8 is very reasonable expectation given where we are at currently. 9 is like, oh, wow, you're starting to overachieve. 10 is overachieving. 11's like, what's going on? 12 is, hey, 2013 all over again, baby. Yeah, you can hear it, watch it however you want to. I went on for a little bit, and thank you, Dennis. What I don't want to be lost in my rant is that I'm not hearing the other side of this. I think that's what people get so bent out of shape about, is when someone offers a different opinion to theirs, their vocal opinion, that's just on a social media platform behind an anonymous names a lot of time, that somehow we don't see what they're saying. We see what you're saying. We're just looking at a bigger picture than you. A lot of the time, not all the time. So yes, that one, I didn't know that I had that in me tonight, but I did. So hopefully I can keep myself in check. And Austin knows where to kind of steer me to. He knows my pressure points in a good way, and knows how to kind of steer me in the direction of getting me to harp on something that he knows that I'll harp on for some time. This was asked a little bit earlier. I don't know if he's here anymore. What was Saban's record his first year at Bama? I don't know, because I'm not a Bama fan. I know it wasn't good. I know they lost to Lamo and Auburn. He became a good coach. Tyler, I've seen, again, I don't know if you're still here. I've seen this comparison preseason and a lot still. I'm going to play both sides here. I don't necessarily agree with this assessment either, because it's 2 different scenarios. And I understand what you're saying still too. To me, it's not necessarily a fair equation there. But I understand what you're getting at. The point you're trying to make is things can look bad very quickly and just as quickly turn around. But different times, it's kind of admitting what a lot of us feel and know. Alabama's just got some advantages that traditionally that Auburn doesn't have. It's why we're kind of the blue collar mentality. I wouldn't say kind of, we are the blue collar mentality. We are the ones that have to fight hard, work hard, work. And we probably reap the rewards less than most. But when we do, it's extra sweet. At least for me, it is. I hope it is still for you all. Let's see here. Corey says, I'm seeing us being back to the promised land. What do you mean the promised land? The national championship, SEC championship? I would say division championship. It's the last year for it. I will say, if you want to talk about a big frustration, that loss kind of makes it very hard to say we'll be able to win the last Western Division championship. I mean, still possible. Don't lose another one, and you'll be fine. But I don't think Texas A&M is good enough to win the SEC West. I don't know that there's a runaway favorite for it right now. LSU looks decent. Alabama, as I've tried to stress to a lot of you that thought that the dynasty was over, and look, they didn't look good on Saturday either, but they are far from done yet. Just give them time. Give them time. There's a reason that when they fall, they don't fall very far. And it frustrates me to no end to admit that. Took Harbaugh 6 years at Michigan and 3 for Sark. The Harbaugh one is interesting that they let him stay as long as he did. And there was, I think, about 2 years ago, like the pinnacle, where it was kind of the unsaid thing. You better get it done this year or else. And he did. Made some drastic changes on offense. I think Hugh knows that if things need to change in a big way, he is not afraid to do it. I don't think we've reached that point, though. Yeah, that Southern Miss lost that first year. I remember that was pretty funny. The Lamo one, all of those different things. So I know we're all venting and expressing our feelings over the last few days. And of course, I was going to take the opportunity to share mine and Austin as well. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight and letting me do that a little bit too. Probably some more of that coming up this Wednesday. So please invite a friend, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't. And even if we disagree, it's okay because we all got opinions and they all stink. Sometimes mine more than others. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this live recording. We appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you very, very soon. Until then, War Eagle.